So Christopher Nolan's biggest movie made $1.1 billion, and it's nowhere near his most successful film. Because ranking movies by gross is how studios want you to look at the box office. Profit is the number that actually matters. So here's what I'm doing today. I'm ranking all 12 Nolan movies, but not by box office, like everyone else does. Here's every Nolan movie ranked by how much every dollar actually came back. Dead last and the only Nolan movie that ever lost money in theaters. Tenet cost $205 million to make, and Nolan being Nolan, some of that went to blowing up an actual Boeing 747 because building a CGI one apparently cost about the same and looked worse. Then the pandemic hit. Warner Brothers pushed the release twice, and Nolan insisted on putting Tenet in theaters in September 2020, partly to save the cinemas he loves so much. Theaters were closed in half the world, New York and LA weren't open, and the movie limped to $365 million worldwide. On a $205 million budget with a full marketing campaign on top, that's a loss. And it broke more than the budget. A few months later, Warner announced its entire 2021 slate would go to HBO Max the same day as theaters. Nolan went public with a statement saying the studio's filmmakers went to bed thinking they worked for the greatest movie studio and woke up working for the worst streaming service. And after almost 20 years and 11 films together, he walked. Now here's what that decision actually cost Warner. Universal happily gave Nolan everything they wouldn't: a long, exclusive theatrical window, a cut of the gross, full control, and the very first movie he made for them was Oppenheimer. $1 billion and 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, that all should have been Warner's. They reportedly tried to win him back afterwards and lost the Odyssey to Universal too. It might be the dumbest studio call of the decade. Insomnia is the only movie Nolan directed but didn't write. It's a remake of a Norwegian thriller with Al Pacino as a detective who can't sleep and Robin Williams as the killer. It made $113 million on a $46 million budget. By studio math, where a movie roughly needs double its budget to break even, that's just barely on the right side of the line. Nobody talks about Insomnia today, but this was basically the audition. Warner handed a $46 million movie and 2 acting legends to a 31-year-old whose previous film was a $9 million indie. Insomnia's budget alone was bigger than everything Memento had earned worldwide. Nolan only got that meeting because Steven Soderbergh personally pushed Warner to take him seriously. He delivered a hit on time and on budget. Without Insomnia, nobody hands him Batman. Every billion in his filmography starts here. This one's going to feel low, and the number is the number. Batman Begins made $373 million on a $150 million budget. That's a 2.5 return, basically the same as Insomnia. For the movie that revived an entire franchise, that's a surprisingly thin result. Here's some context, though. In 2005, Batman was damaged goods. Batman and Robin had flopped so hard in 1997 that Warner shelved its most valuable franchise for 8 years. Nolan rebooted it as a grounded crime story and made Christian Bale the definitive Batman. And that thin 2.5 return bought Warner something much bigger. It rebuilt the asset. The 2 sequels that followed grossed over $2 billion combined. So basically, Batman Begins was the down payment. And people bought tickets in 2005 because it was a Batman movie, not because it was a Nolan movie. His name wasn't the draw yet. It's the last time that was true. Right between his 2 biggest career leaps, Nolan made a movie about 2 Victorian magicians destroying each other's lives. Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman dueling obsessives with a twist ending that recast the entire film as a magic trick. Commercially, it was a step backwards, $109 million worldwide, coming off a Batman movie that made 3 times that. But look at the budget, $40 million, and it actually out-earned Batman Begins on a per-dollar basis. It also did something more important. It proved the Batman gig wasn't a fluke, and that Nolan could deliver a profitable original film with movie stars in it. The studio kept writing checks. The next original he made with that trust was Inception. Number 8 in this ranking of the most profitable Nolan movies is Memento. It opened in 11 theaters. It's a $9 million thriller about a man who can't form new memories, told backwards. This was actually an idea Nolan's brother pitched him during a cross-country road trip. No distributor wanted it. They thought audiences were too dumb for it. So the production company released it themselves, and then word of mouth took over. From 11 theaters, it spread to over 500, ran for months, and finished with 40 million worldwide, 30-plus awards, and 2 Oscar nominations, including Best Original Screenplay. A 4.4 times return on a movie nobody wanted to touch. Hold on to that number because a billion-dollar Batman movie is about to post it too. Here it is, the #1 Nolan movie on every gross ranking ever made. 1.1 billion worldwide, 81 million more than The Dark Knight, the biggest raw number of his career. And Warner nearly had a heart attack over it. When the IMAX prologue screened, audiences couldn't understand a word Bane said through the mask. It looked like a $250 million investment about to ship with an unintelligible villain. So the studio pushed hard for changes. But Nolan barely adjusted the mix and told everyone to deal with it. The movie made $1 billion anyway. And that lands it at just number 7, because it also carried the biggest budget of his career at that point, $250 million. And when you run the division, The Dark Knight Rises returned 4.5 times its cost. Memento returned 4.4. So dollar for dollar, a $1 billion Batman finale and a $9 million indie that opened in 11 theaters were the same investment. Interstellar made $681 million in its original 2014 run. Solid, but not spectacular. What's funny here is what happened next. This started as a Steven Spielberg project over at Paramount. When Spielberg walked and Nolan took over, Warner wanted a piece so badly they traded actual franchise rights to Paramount to buy in, including their stake in Friday the 13th. A major studio gave up a horror franchise for a share of one Nolan movie. And it was a smart move, actually, because the movie just kept printing money. When it hit theaters again in 2024 for its 10th anniversary, the plan was a one-week IMAX run in 165 theaters. Demand was so high they expanded it to 320 theaters and kept it running. It outgrossed Gladiator 2 on some days, a brand new movie, and became the highest-grossing IMAX re-release of all time. Then it went to India in 2025 and broke the record for the biggest Hollywood re-release opening in the country's history. All those reruns have pushed the total to around $760 million, and it is still earning money in 2026. Most blockbusters are done earning after 6 months. This one has been on the payroll for 12 years, and the return keeps climbing. $839 million for an original concept. No book, no comic, no sequel, no remake, just a script about thieves who steal ideas from inside your dreams. And Nolan spent about 10 years refining it before he trusted himself to shoot it. Look at how long it kept earning. Inception opened to $62.7 million domestic and ended up at $292, nearly 5 times its opening weekend. People weren't just showing up once, they kept coming back and bringing friends for months. Original blockbusters almost never post numbers like this. And here's the financial miracle nobody mentions. No studio writes a $160 million check for an original script about dream heists. Warner did it for one reason. The Dark Knight had just made $1 billion, Nolan was the Batman guy, and keeping him happy was worth anything. Inception was effectively the price Warner paid for Batman 3. It turned out to be one of the best purchases in the studio's history. On paper, Dunkirk is a commercial suicide note, a World War II movie about a retreat. No stars in the lead roles, barely any dialogue, 3 timelines running at different speeds, and the shortest runtime of Nolan's blockbuster career. Just look at what Warner paid him. By 2017, Nolan had the leverage to demand $20 million upfront and 20% of first-dollar gross. That means that every single ticket sold put money in his pocket before the studio recovered anything. At the time, it was called the richest director deal since Peter Jackson and Lord of the Rings. It opened to $50 million domestic and finished with $525 million worldwide on a $100 million budget. It also ran a 3.75 multiple off its opening. Again, months of steady business instead of one big weekend. This is the purest test of the Nolan brand ever run. Take away the superheroes, the stars, and the sci-fi hook, sell nothing but the director's name and an IMAX screen, and people still show up. After Dunkirk, no studio doubted whose name was selling the tickets. By 2008, only 3 movies in history had ever crossed $1 billion. The Dark Knight became the 4th. This was the first major film shot on IMAX cameras. That bet is what took IMAX from Science Museum screens to the premium ticket you pay for today. Premium screens are a core revenue stream for every blockbuster today, and it all started right here. And this one had Heath Ledger's Joker, a performance so big it turned a superhero sequel into a cultural event and won Ledger an Oscar after his death. The movie broke opening records, ran all summer long, and after it, studios stopped treating comic book movies like kids' stuff. It even forced the Academy's hand. People were so angry it got snubbed for Best Picture that the Oscars bumped the category up to 10 nominees the very next year. People still call it the Dark Knight rule. $1 billion on a $185 million budget is a 5.5 return. The best of the 3 Batman movies by a wide margin. The better movie was also the better investment. A 3-hour R-rated biopic about a physicist, where the climax is a security hearing. That movie made $976 million. Before release, tracking had Oppenheimer opening between $40 and $50 million. It opened to $82.4, then ran a 4x multiple to $330 million domestic. It became the highest-grossing biopic ever made and the highest-grossing World War II movie ever made. And then it swept the Oscars with Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. And here's the petty part. Warner Brothers, the studio Nolan had just divorced over Tenet, scheduled Barbie on the exact same day. Half the industry read it as revenge. Instead of killing each other, the 2 movies fused into Barbenheimer, the biggest box office event in years, and Warner's own counter-programming ended up boosting Nolan's opening weekend. His personal cut of the movie was north of $100 million. And the budget was $100 million. No superhero, no franchise, no toys to sell, and it returned almost 10 times its cost. Among blockbusters, nothing else Nolan has made comes close. Well, at least until The Odyssey comes out. And number 1 is a Nolan movie most people have never even seen. Nothing else he made earned more on its budget. Following 1998, Nolan's first feature. He shot it in black and white on 16mm on weekends over the course of a year with his friends as the cast. The budget was $6,000. To save money on film stock, he rehearsed every scene to death so they could get takes in 1 or 2 tries. It grossed about $240,000, which sounds like pocket change. It's also a 40x return. 4,000%. Nothing else in this filmography is in the same universe. And to give you a sense of just how cheap it was, the $250 million they're spending on The Odyssey would pay for following about 40,000 times over.